Welcome to Land&Legacy Podcast. It's your host, Adam Keith.
And Matt Dye.
And Zach Shermer.
And we're here on the Habitat Heroes Podcast. I don't know if you guys like that or not, but you haven't.
I've never been a hero before, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Well, you're a Habitat hero.
Oh, that's true.
We all Habitat heroes. And so anyway, we're right here on the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network. And we have a special property breakdown for you this week. We are going over a 40-acre piece that our good friend Mr. Ryan Kirby recently purchased in Illinois. And I think it's a great reminder of everybody out there who's dreaming of owning land. And I think we get stuck in that. And we talked about it a little bit over on the hunting podcast about stuck in you have to own big tracts of land to manage deer. But if you have the right 40, you can definitely, even the right 20, you can kill some good deer. And Ryan's definitely in the heart of it here in Illinois.
He's the prime example of, or the epitome of hardworking, loves land, wants to raise his kid on this piece of land and hunt with him and work the land. He comes from a farming background, as you guys, if you listen to that podcast, have figured out. But this property right here can and will be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looks pretty cool.
Going to make Illinois great again, right there. Mr. Ryan Kirby.
Minus the tax situation.
That's
right.
Yeah. And land prices.
Yeah.
But before we do that, we have our final QDMA module. If you've tracked along with us and followed along for that whole breakdown, we are number 9 this week, and it is all about QDMA. We're not going to spend a great deal of time really talking about it. We're kind of doing an overall breakdown, but hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If not, it's a great series. You ought to go through it. Sign up by going to qdma.com/land&legacy for a 20% discount on that module group. Go through 9 weeks or 9 segments of all kinds of things, all habitat and deer focused. Shermer, you went through it.
Yeah, I missed out on number 9. I was off one.
Oh, yeah,
I just got
one. He came here today and he's like, "Man, I nerded out over it." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, when he was talking about the science of it, I'm like, I'm sitting there in my head going, "What is he talking about?"
That stuff is fascinating to me.
Oh, the whitetail biology?
Number 8, yeah.
Yeah.
Number 8.
Yeah.
So I was one behind. You guys snuck a podcast in on me. But
are you saying you don't follow along every week?
You haven't posted it yet, have you? I didn't get an update.
We have not on our not on the website.
Okay.
Matt handles that side. So, but I posted it.
If I phase out in this podcast too, it's because I just got back into town,
and you
30
have
minutes
seed
ago.
ticks all over your ankles,
and I'm gonna
dude.
scratch, dude.
He's over here
on a great property in Ohio yesterday and left there this morning. But every time you got out of the rig and you started to walk across it, it was like, look at your pants. You just see that little cloud just start spreading. That
was like Laddie's deal in Delaware.
Yeah.
They were everywhere.
And you didn't have any spray.
I had treated my pants.
But
who
really buys that?
It wasn't a month ago. It was really recent. And I was like, please work. Just please work. But every time you see him, you're like, I got to get him off. I got to get him off.
Seed ticks are the worst.
Terrible.
We came in
terrible.
We came in for a break during lunch, and I was like, I'm at least getting new socks. So I went and changed socks and did a little scratch and scrub down on the ankles. And
I don't blame you. But
it was worth it. It was a great property.
Sounds like it.
And that's part of this trip because Matt and I, we went up and we met with Pure Air Natives. So that was last week's podcast. You guys heard us talk with Justin Adams over there. And then we went up to Mr. Ryan Kirby's property,
which is
we
this
did a
week.
podcast with him, and we're breaking down. So it's Ryan Kirby week right here on Land&Legacy Podcast.
If you don't follow his stuff,
you have
Instagram. Yeah, you're a fool. I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah, there's great humor with his son Rhett, and there's great, amazing
extreme talent
and amazing artwork. So go check him out at Ryan Kirby on Instagram. It might be Ryan Kirby Art.
Ryan Kirby Art, that's right.
Yeah, so check it out. But anyway, we were there, and then I went to Southern Illinois, and then Matt went on to PA, and then Virginia, and then on your way back home, you went to Ohio. So we've been on a tour here lately. So
we need to have. You know what we should do? We should name a tour, one that we it's super scheduled out, where it's well in advance. We make just this big Eastern tour. You know how artists, they have a
habitat tour?
Yeah. Ooh.
And we could like film it going to different farms and cut it
That's
all
really
up into
cool.
different films.
Yeah. Habitat heroes.
Habitat hero.
I'm getting more work here as I keep talking.
Yeah. You know what
like
else
that
we should
idea.
film? We should.
What else do you guys need?
Yeah.
I actually need to practice my bow, and I need you the form and everything.
There
I
you
need to
go. Some
review it.
high frame rate, some slow motion stuff.
So QDMA this week was very. It was all basically talking about QDMA over the years. Of course, organization started in 1987, and they've been going on for 30 years now, and really have kind of evolved and are really one of the main, I would say, the main organization fighting the white-tailed deer.
Not fighting
heritage.
against it, fighting for it.
Fighting the.
Oh, I said white-tailed deer heritage, like and the habitat and fighting for the animal, fighting the fight of making sure we have future hunts for QDMA, and so or for all deer hunters. So that's kind of really what this whole segment's about, and how they've changed and what their mindset is on habitat management and deer management in general. And I think one of the biggest things, we'll just talk about some of the biggest misconceptions that I've heard is that, and I know what mentioned is, but QDMA is always about killing big bucks.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's been around much at all and has probably heard that false line about QDMA. The other one is that they're all about shooting numerous amounts of does. Mm-hmm. But really, the gist of it is they're all about a healthy deer herd. So understanding if it's
only if you've not done your job.
Yeah.
Right? It's only if it's out of whack. If it doesn't need to, you don't need to shoot a bunch. You don't have to.
And I think one of the biggest things is whenever people get so mad about seeing somebody shoot a bunch of does, and they don't realize the fact that if that population is really, really out of whack or it's really overpopulated, there's a good chance that a really bad winter could cause a lot of them to starve to death, which is a much worse death, and they go to waste usually. At least by harvesting does, you're feeding a lot of families, and
even if they're not dying, they're under extreme stress.
Stress and not doing.
No one likes to
great.
see that.
So, honestly, with QDMA, it's always about understanding the health of the herd and how to improve it or keep it in balance. And so, they're usually looking at. A lot of us are focused on harvesting mature deer. And there's a portion in this last module about why young deer are important in the ratio and why they don't encourage every hunter to be taking 1.5-year-old bucks. But the one thing I did like, and I think this is important to note, is that with new hunters, it's very important that they get to harvest whatever makes them happy.
No, for
whatever is
sure.
going to bring them back out.
Yep.
And so it was a really good one. One of the other key points I liked was the difference between traditional deer management, QDMA, or QDM management, and trophy deer management. And it talked about conventional and QDM could be done on any acre, any farm, but trophy deer management is 5,000 acres or larger. And traditional deer management was always just shoot the bucks and leave the does. QDM is about shooting does and bucks, keeping it balanced. And I mean, when I think and this is not when I think of traditional deer management, I picture the old school photo with 10 deer on the rack, or 10 bucks on the rack just lined up, or all packed into the back of a truck bed. And QDMA would be about the same of bucks to does. And so in a lot of cases in this day and age, it'd be probably more does than bucks because we are so overpopulated with does in a lot of places. So that, I think, was a great reminder that QDMA was right there in that wheelhouse of what I know I want to be at. And so it was a really good module.
And that's the thing. Like, when you look at who's leading the organization, who's running the organization, who is on staff at the organization, and they all wear many hats. But they're scientists and they're biologists, but they're also deer hunters, and they're also extremely nice people, great personalities. But I say that as we do research in habitat. We do tests. It may not be like, exact numbers associated with things that we're doing, but we're testing all the time. they're researching and they're working with researchers that are finding the most not distinct. That's not the right word. The newest, the freshest information on whitetail deer.
Right.
They do that daily. So why go anywhere else to any other organization to get your information? Like, that's their job.
Yeah.
And they're taking that information, not only getting it out there, but they're using that information then to make guidelines or recommendations on how to better that species. And that's the whole basis of QDMA. Scientific knowledge.
Yep.
To improve a resource for others to enjoy.
Yeah.
People, I get so sick of seeing people that are unqualified talk about CWD.
I'm not going to tell someone
talk about something else and
how to manage their wealth. Like,
yeah,
that's a bad idea for me.
I'm not going to go tell somebody how to change the engine out of a car.
Right.
I'm not going to tell somebody how to the deer biology. What I will tell you is how to improve the habitat.
Right.
And how to maintain that habitat and make and use some habitat improvement techniques to increase deer quality, but also put deer in front of your tree stand.
Right.
And how to have more quail and how to work a property with cows and wildlife and how to make it work. That's our specialty. And QDMA's specialty is understanding white-tailed deer and the diseases they face and the future of it.
And projecting the future of it and what we can do right now to improve the odds of that resource being beneficial and staying in a productive state in the future.
That's right.
And I didn't read through this module, but you kind of had started with like misconceptions of QDMA. Well, I mean, if you were just to read through these modules, you'll understand what they're trying to do. They're not just saying kill the big buck.
Yeah.
It's all herd health. And all these modules are, like you said too, like scientifically based facts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they care about
current information.
Right. They care about from fawns all the way to the 6.5-year-old mature buck. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're covering everything in between and everything about those deer. So, if there's any misconception about them, just read any of their articles, and it'll
read any of the articles and go take this module.
Yeah.
Learn about the actual, deer, the subject that this whole organization is based on, and you will see then as a result the publication, what they do and put out is all about that animal.
Exactly. And the
betterment of it.
The number 8 that I read, that was probably my favorite one so far. It's just fascinating to me to knowing the science and the biology behind a deer and their vision, how their vision works. I like that kind of stuff. But then there's also things, if that's something you don't care about, then there's something about the rut in there. So there's something for everyone in those.
Look at you, my
You're turning
friend.
me.
You've came to the nerd side.
It is though, man. Like, and another thing too.
Great nerd.
Yeah. Another thing too is like I feel like the more you know about the animals that you're hunting, whether it be their eyesight whenever they're down eating,
you become a better hunter.
Absolutely. Their glands and their the more you can learn about them and the habitat, the better you are. At predicting where they're going to be and how to hunt them.
Not to change the target from a white-tailed deer to a human being, but isn't that kind of what like a Navy SEAL does?
Exactly.
They understand their target and their habits.
100%, yeah.
Or it's your wife. You understand your wife, or you try your hardest to understand your wife.
I've never.
And then life just gets a little bit more better when you do.
I really
right?
suck at understanding myself. But no, I think for sure I think it was a great module. I love the whole thing. I do have a would you rather that I'll ask you guys now, and then you can think about yours through the podcast. Ask me later. But as we wind this up, again, qdma.com/land&legacy, 20% discount to go through the modules. But also, what was your favorite one, Matt?
Oh, great question. And I would say, first off, if you did go through all of them or you're jumping back and getting caught up, thank you for following along too, because that was – I enjoyed being able to do this and use some of that education that they've put together in this unique module format and go through it with everyone. There is additional things we might be working on in the future to expand, this type of format we're talking about with the podcast and listeners. So be watching for that. But my favorite module, I think it was the Whitetail Rut, honestly.
Yeah.
There's so much talk about the rut, and there's so much focus from deer hunters, of course, on the rut. But there's so much misinformation and observations and anecdotal stuff you hear floating around.
Right.
But there is so much science that is devoted and time by scientists that whether it's prove or disprove does not matter. They have the hard facts.
Yep.
And when you understand that animal to that fullest extent that's out there, like you said, you become a great hunter.
Yeah.
A great hunter. Or you should be able to understand the habitat, have hashtag woodsmanship.
Oh, goodness.
And
We're
then
gonna stop
understand
this?
the animal. You can kill deer, good deer, every single year if they're out there.
What about you, Shermer?
What do you mean?
Favorite,
Oh, you already
what's
know
your favorite?
mine. The one I just read, 8. That's the one I've been talking
That
about.
was
Yeah.
a really good one. Well, I think my
The
favorite was
biology.
the food plot one.
Yeah.
That was a good
because
one,
there was
yeah.
so much information there. But so here's my would you rather. Would you rather go on a hunt this fall with, and I'll just say the 3 that really kind of came through a lot: Lindsey Thomas Jr. in Georgia,
Okay.
Matt Ross. He's
New York.
New
He
New
lives
York,
in New York. Yep.
or Kip Adams in PA. Which one would you rather
North
hunt
Central
with?
PA.
We answering now?
Yeah.
Good
And
question.
if you don't know these guys, they're all a hoot to hang out
Oh,
with.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And so you really, you're going to have fun anywhere you go. So really the question
This
is,
is where you want to
It's
hunt.
a justifiable thing. I'm not a fan of hunting in the heat. So, Lindsay, I would want to hunt with you and experience that because he's got an awesome place down there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big family steam tradition. So, that would be cool to go and see and enjoy. But I don't want to be hunting in short sleeves.
in mosquitoes.
And mosquitoes. I don't want mosquitoes. So, but then again, I've always wanted to go to Pennsylvania and experience that hunting tradition too.
Yeah.
I know New York has it, but I would go to Kip's place, or I would invite myself to Kip's place, right?
Kip, I'm coming
and
down.
see.
Coming over.
I want to experience that. Just to say, I've been to opening day in PA and just seen everyone come out and enjoy and have that tailgate down right around town experience. And
Tailgate down, windows up, because it might be cold.
That's fine though
Yeah.
too. I got my buffalo plaid, or
Yeah.
I've got my full orange suit and my 30-30,
Onesie, your
and
onesie.
it doesn't matter. I'm in PA opening day.
Yeah. What about you?
I'd say Georgia
I was going to say Georgia myself.
because you can hunt a different rut. You could still get our rut and then be able to go hunt that one.
What
Kind
is
of
he?
coastal.
Yeah.
He's right.
That
on the
one
coast.
was a little bit later than ours, right? That was in like January, right?
Yeah, I can't. I don't know.
I don't remember either.
specifically.
To
But
me,
it's in
I
the
just think,
modules. If you
It
look
is
at
in
the modules.
That's right.
I just think of, down south, there's kind of that, there's great history anywhere in the country with whitetail deer. PA's got a really strong one,
Yeah.
but Georgia's pretty strong too.
Very strong.
And so to me, that's what I just think of, like, you're going to the south, you're going to go deer hunting, and you're going to watch some college football.
Right.
And
That'd be
to
awesome.
me, I just like,
You're like tailgating before going in the woods.
Yeah.
it don't even matter if we
You
go
bring-
early. I've hunted Georgia before, and I enjoyed the heck out of it.
You bring
so.
your climber and hunt the big pine thickets.
There you go.
So
Oh.
just keep climbing 30
That's
foot
fun.
up, and you're like, I ain't looking down.
That's
I'm
like where
still
we
going.
hunt in Arkansas.
the
There's
kudzu
big,
patches.
those big pine thickets, man. You can get up there so
Oh, yeah.
high.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah,
Matt's going to PA, and we're going to Georgia.
Yeah.
Matt Ross,
It-
I'll come next year.
Yeah,
Thanks for
poor
the
guy.
invite.
He just posts all those videos and pictures where it's always snowing.
I
So
know,
I'm like,
I
the
know.
heck with that.
And it's April. I'm like, dude, it's 60 degrees. I remember texting this spring. I was like, turkeys are gobbling out here, man. He's like, I think this is our last bit of snow. I'm like, have fun.
Yeah.
Dang.
Have fun.
So we'll go down there, and then we'll invite all of them out to Missouri. So,
There we go.
Yeah, but anyway, no, I thought that'd be interesting to see what you guys said. So going in, breaking down 40-acre piece of property.
Ooh, 40
and,
acres.
And everybody thinks 40 acres, not a lot you can do.
Northwestish Illinois.
Yeah.
I mean, it's farm country. Most
Yeah.
of all of Illinois is farm country. This is no different.
This is 40-acre wood lot, kind of
Yeah.
in a big drainage in between huge crop fields.
Yeah, and if I were to buy something in crop country, that's exactly what I'd be looking for.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I would just want all timber.
Yeah.
Yep. And you think about historically in Illinois, there was the great prairies of it. And then that kind of rolled into the savannas of the drainages and woodlands.
The
And
mixture.
so there were some big trees we saw in this
We did
place
see.
that were you could tell were wolfy at one point that kind of ended up getting crowded out.
5 monster trees.
Really?
Monsters. Yep. But that's it. That's all that really remained. And we walked it. We walked it all. We saw a bunch, but 5 distinct trees was like, okay, you've been here a long time.
Yeah.
Big monster bur oaks.
And I think, so basically it's 40 acres, and you guys, if you've seen the post or wherever you're viewing it, there's going to be a photo. Go to our Facebook page and check it out. If you're there and you don't like the page yet, like it, please. And it's basically 40 acres of solid timber with a creek running through it and one little opening that's maybe 3/4 of an acre, or maybe an acre. I
think he said it was 1.1 right when we arrived. But there is some trees still kind of scattered throughout. So
yes.
The shape is 1.1.
And so we're looking at one food plot in the northwest side, and the rest is all timber. So how in the heck do we manage that? And there's always a way to manage it. And there's always a way to improve the hunting of the property and improve the layout and diversify and fragment this property.
And I think it's important to talk about, as before we go through it, is when he's hunting and how he's going to hunt it. Like, he's up here during the first part of November for a week, 10 days. And so that's a great time to hunt it, of course, but there's we need stands for every wind. We have to lay it out in a fashion that if he gets thrown a curveball, he gets two days in a row of east winds, he's got to have a place to hunt.
Right.
We've got to set it up in a fashion that, it's accessible for him during that time period. Give him the best chance first week of November, heavy pre-rut, heavy chasing, to be able to come in here and hunt this property.
Yeah, and you've got to be on 40 acres. You've got to be very meticulous and weary about how you move around.
Yeah.
You don't want to spook a lot of deer on 40 acres.
And I think that's where you could really say that guys on 40 acres or smaller pieces that hunt them appropriately use woodsmanship to their advantage.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get very lazy when we have a big chunk of ground. We can say, whatever, I've got a bunch of stuff
No,
to do.
you're right.
So
but on 40 acres, it's ninja-like focus of going, okay, I have to go in on these winds. And if you go in a 40-acre chunk and you use, let's say you go to the south end to hunt it on a south wind, and you blow your scent all the way across it, and you've alerted all the deer that were focused on your ground as being the sanctuary are now going, whoa, something's up. I'm going to have to go elsewhere.
And I think it's important to identify what type of property, because 40 acres, yes, is limited. Doesn't mean you can't have portions of your property devoted to better bedding. But like this property itself, no matter what, just the way it lays in the area that it lays, it is a travel corridor. A lot of deer, we're making it so deer will bed here, but a lot of deer will still funnel and pass through this property. So understanding that, like how your property hunts and how deer are going to utilize it, even after we do habitat work, is still important. Keeping that in mind.
So number one, the food plot is the heartbeat of this property. It's really the
focal point.
The focal point that we want all deer coming to and from and moving from. And so how do we do that? We make sure it's an attractive food source year-round. And so there are certain times of the year where clover is not great. There's certain times of the year where soybeans are not great. There's certain times of the year where another food plot, wheat, may not be great. But if we have all of them there, we have food year-round. So half of this food plot will be suggested to be planted in a perennial mix of clovers, alfalfas, chicories, and the other side will be planted in soybeans, maybe a portion of it fence, maybe not, but soybeans, and then planted again in the fall with a mix like the Legacy blend from Stratton Seed Company.
High diversity, cool season, annual mix.
Yep.
That's it. And so you have this food year-round, so it's attractive year-round. And that's one way to really get deer honing in on this area throughout the year.
Yeah.
Number two, how do we fragment timber country?
And this is like, everyone could probably identify with it. Tall timber, big, thick canopy, not much understory. And I say understory as in a lot of varying structure. You had some buckeye trees, but there wasn't much shrub or woody vegetation growing at a height of under 8 feet. It was stinging nettle.
Oh my
throughout
gosh.
the entire property.
Sherman, do you know what stinging nettle is? Itchweed. On the rivers around here, we get it to where it's kind of like a leaf. It would be basically a teardrop-shaped leaf with little sawtooth all around it. And when you bump up against it, it burns your legs.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about now.
You hit it wrong.
Does it flower?
Yeah. Yeah, a little white flower. Oh, yeah.
Okay, never mind. The one I was thinking of is yellow. Never mind.
You may be thinking of jewelweed.
Yeah.
But, man, you just flat out just light you up. But it grows great in shade, moist soil, and that was what this place was. The thing about itchweed is they do eat it, but
they can eat
first
anything.
frost hits, and it's gone.
Like
really?
It just
lay
wilts.
flat against the ground.
And so
It's
even though
weak.
we're walking through waist-high spots in places, it's going to be down as soon as the frost hits, which is going to be sometime in October probably. And so now we've got wide open timber with no food value.
Like wide open timber.
Yeah.
Did he just
150, 200 yards.
He just purchased it then?
Yeah.
I imagine you guys got him on a – yeah, you're going to talk about it, right? Got him on a plan to get some –
bedding thickets.
there you go.
Oh, that's number 2.
That's it. That's how
See, I was trying to transition you there.
Okay. I see what you're doing there. I see it, yeah.
bedding thickets right here where we're fragmenting this landscape, and we are making it to where there is now sunshine hitting the forest floor. Now we have more herbaceous plants that are going to be there throughout more longer period of the year. Then we have young forest or woody browse coming up or stump sprouting on those trees that we cut, to where now we have a humongous amount of food and cover in pockets on this place.
Dotted throughout here, and in this, and not just at random, at very distinct spots as we anticipate how deer are going to travel from one to another, and then how you can access and hunt those appropriately. But the thing is, okay, we understand, yes, it was like the 9th of August when we went in and cleared those areas. It's going to be limited regeneration between now and, the first frost, or when everything is senescing and not photosynthesizing and grow. Like, you're not going to have that much growth. But right now, year one, what we do have that was not there is canopies of trees on the ground. And just that difference is going to attract does and put deer in those areas bedded down consistently. And that's year one, very little regeneration, just a canopy is going to be attractive bedding area for does and bucks throughout this fall.
Did you guys happen to see that video that I posted yesterday on the Land&Legacy Facebook page of a doe, and she is hammering a little eastern black walnut tree that we cut. We cut it.
Oh, yes. The trail cam video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it started stump sprouting. So we cut it in early June. It was stump sprouting like crazy. And there was 8 different deer that came in over the course of 13 days. And it's just like you could see it growing up, browse down, re-sprout, browse down, re-sprout, browse down.
Just continuous food.
They're just pumping it out.
Food. And it was eastern black walnut. Who thinks of eastern black walnut as being great food?
Right.
But so they don't crush the nuts and eat those. But
they eat the leaves if they're low enough.
That's
if
it.
they're accessible. Yeah. And it's so tender. Like,
Oh,
that
man.
was like
There's
veal.
There's
the veal
It's the veal
of walnut leaves, right?
There's one video of the doe, and she one doe that comes in, and everything on top's been browsed. And unfortunately, we didn't have the camera to monitor the stump. We had it up there to monitor the fence gap, so we can't see the whole stump. But they were actually coming in, and she looked, and you could see her like looking at the top, nothing, and then you see her browsing down below, like she's pulling. You can just see her like pulling stuff off the bottom.
Was it like root suckers coming up that she was browsing on there?
You can't even tell. You can see her grab stuff. And by the way, if you guys can hear the background noise, we're in the middle of a wicked thunderstorm right now.
Thank God.
Yeah, I mean,
some rain.
Yeah, well,
I was gonna say, you don't like thunderstorms. You're just glad you're here with us. We're protecting you.
Yeah, exactly. My
tell
big
ya,
saviors.
The bad thing is, I looked at the radar while we were recording, and it's split, and it has not hit the farm yet.
Really? It looked like when I was driving over, it was. It
looked like it was going to, but it started kind of breaking up.
Did the old Dodge dip,
Yeah.
duck,
I
and
feel
dive.
like that's happened a lot at our
The
place.
5 Ds of dodgeball. Yeah.
But
The
no,
5 days of thunderstorms in the summer on your farm.
Yeah.
it'll split.
Yeah.
Dodge, dip, dive, duck, and dodge.
Then
Again,
dodge,
right?
2 dodges. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, number 2, we are adding the fragmented bedding thickets. And not only that, when we put those in place, they're so thick, we want it to be where deer can maneuver in them. But so during that October, November time frame, when does are getting pestered by the bucks, they seek out the thickest cover they can find to hide and avoid bucks. They're going to these bedding thickets. The bucks start following scent trails, and they start noticing, and this only gets better over time, but they start noticing that's where the does go. Mm-hmm. So they start going and connecting the dots of bedding thickets and always going on the downwind side. In case there is a doe missing that they don't see, they can still smell and see if she's in there.
And it just so happens that there's tree stands placed exactly for that
in
movement.
there. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly
just
for
like
that.
we drew it up. So as tree stands 50, 60 yards from the edge of that bedding thicket, and they're going to walk in somewhere in between.
Here's an important thing, I think. If you're sitting here listening to this podcast and you say, what can I do right now? And your timber is wide open and you want to better your chances, there's not many things that you can do habitat-wise speaking that you're going to get direct turnaround benefit. But if your timber is wide open, you have very little or poor quality bedding throughout your property that you hunt and you have permission or you can go in, drop some trees.
Yep.
Drop some trees, have some canopy, some structure on the ground to obstruct views, and to allow deer to bed in them. This fall, they were bedding them. And then you know where deer are bedding and can hunt at the right time of the year those areas
And
intentionally.
There's food everywhere for them.
Yep.
I was just
There
at the
will be.
farm today.
Yep.
It's like I always want to look at where I've been doing the work, and it's just
Well,
green,
you have to learn.
lush. I mean,
Yes.
just thick green growth, and everything's nipped off. All the stump sprouts are just destroyed. It's
Veal.
Yeah, it's crazy. The veal.
I don't know. Look at
The
that.
veal stump
Kick
sprout.
that. Yeah.
But no, you can't have. I mean, and then if you go to our food plots, and it's just like, oof,
Right?
yikes, a little dusty. Well, the dust is
Yeah.
a little knocked down because we've had some rain, luckily. But yeah, the timber where the sun's getting in is 10 times better looking than anything else on our farm.
And that's the thing. It's a chainsaw. We knocked out 3 to 4 of these in a matter of 3 hours. And these are large trees that we're knocking down too. Strategically and safely, of course, but it can be done in an afternoon.
Right.
Like, it's that simple of a technique in the right area to place these throughout a farm, and you're changing the way you hunt and you're changing the way deer use your property. Because seriously though, if during this time of the year he were to go back there and hadn't done these cuts throughout the property, I don't think a deer really would have bedded on that property, on this 40 acres. There's a couple spots where it was thick enough. There were some areas like right there along this creek in the center that was thick willows, but there's no quality areas to bed.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder to hunt too. Your deer are spread out.
Or
that
they're
was
not
our
even getting
problem.
to that food plot
Right.
during daylight hours.
Yeah.
That's another thing. They're in close proximity. They're get up, walk right there, be there before it gets dark.
Yep.
You can do that on, this is, again, we're probably going to hit it hard today, but this is 40 acres.
Yeah.
That's the difference that you can make on just 40 acres by having distinct bedding.
And you can do it on
food plot.
20.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely something to do. You're kind of new to the bedding thickets.
That's right.
I remember when we first toured you and your dad's place. It was like bedding thickets was kind of a new thing for you guys, and so now you're kind of seeing the immediate results after cutting
Exactly.
and burning. Definitely a planned burn, but
Yeah. hey.
and so
And get in before those
that's a little bit of an inside joke there, but we definitely have the burned, and now so you got the fast pace, the fast forward
went all-
motion. You cut and burn,
All
and
in.
so you got just a huge flush in 1
Yes.
year, and
Yeah.
now you can see the immediate. I know just the other day you're talking about cedars getting cut, native grasses coming up, deer were bedding in it.
Yep.
I noticed this, Matt. I didn't even tell you. You were still in PA when I saw this, but the other day I went and looked at one of our. I was checking trail cameras, and I went to the Fiasco food plot.
Yep.
And I stepped over there to see, I think Chad called it Old World milkweed that he had found.
Old World?
Yeah.
World? Like as in WH or world as in like globe?
As in world.
No, seriously, there's
I don't
two.
know. Actually, to tell you the truth, I don't even know.
Okay, because world is like a
Whiskey.
The way.
Why are you saying what way? Is that what you were thinking?
I was like, no.
What movie is that?
I don't know.
Dude, you know he's like he tries to be like an Evel Knievel type character. Our safe word is whiskey. Whiskey. Why are you saying that? Why am I saying what way?
I don't know.
Just reminded me.
I
of
was
that.
thinking of, but when he said that, I was thinking of high school Spanish when we asked the teacher, "Is it sábado or sábado?" And she goes, "It's sábado, not sábado."
Well, because
That's what I'm saying.
when I worked at Quantico Marine Corps Base, there was a endangered plant species, and it was small whorled pogonia, and it was the world or whorled. There we go. I had to get the throat whorled in there. It was basically the layout of the plant and how the leaves were oriented around it.
Whorled around.
It did. Hey, look it up. So
no, I don't know what it. I think it was the way I interpreted his way of saying it was old world.
what was the enunciation like when he
What was
presented
Chad's enunciation?
world?
Say that in Pig Latin, please.
Can you please use that in a sentence? Yeah.
So, number 3, edge feathering. And number 3 went to basically right just south of the food plot. And the reason for edge feathering is to improve habitat. We're making it more beneficial to other species.
Yep.
We're going to get more regen on woody browse, so there is winter food there. We're also making more cover so deer feel more comfortable moving into this food plot and being in this food plot during daylight hours. But also flip it to the other side from the woods looking into the food plot is once you get this growth, you're not going to be able to see from the woods into the food plot. So a buck has to come into the food plot to see what's in there, rather than stand 50 yards back and look and say, there's no deer out there.
Seeing is believing. For
it.
deer, it's the exact same stance as they're searching for does. They need to visually see. Scent checking is great, but if they can take a few more steps to get out there, they will.
Yep.
That's
certainly
right.
will.
So edge feathering, and that's going from almost a vein-like effect or a cove of a lake effect from the edge of the food plot back into the timber. So it's not a consistent 50 yards or 30 yards section. It's maybe 40 yards here and 20 yards there and 10 yards there, whatever.
And what I like about that is it doesn't just improve that immediate area, but if you take more of a macro view and look a little bit further out from that, if you go west of that little edge feathering, that number 3 there, like that food plot pinches down. So now that it's edge feathered and it's a little bit harder for deer to get through that specific area, you are now creating a better bottleneck at the very west corner of that food plot. And there's another stand there, will be there as well. So you're not only creating great habitat around there, increasing forage, obstructing views, you're creating a bottleneck that can be hunted, just out off the food plot in a whole different area of the farm.
Yeah.
Like, there's multiple benefits, and funneling deer because of the edge feathering is reason number 1, but a lot of added benefits.
I was going to mention the bottleneck. I feel like that's like a really important thing that some people might miss, like whenever they have an idea of creating a food plot in an area. Well, let's just make a field, and you stop make a circle field, and it's like, well, it's 100 yards across. How am I going to shoot with my bow? Whenever you could make it maybe a little bit longer.
Cam Haines it.
Okay. Hey, 100-yard on a whitetail is a pretty hard shot. Even on anything. But anyways, it's like, what'd you call it? I think last podcast you said farm architecture.
Yeah.
What'd you
property
call it?
architecture.
Property architecture.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point. But and you can also do that too if you have existing fields with the way you said with edge feathering and hinge cutting and kind of directing them in particular areas.
Every farm I think that we probably went to in this past habitat tour, whatever you want to call it, if there were food plots there, most likely a portion of them we've recommended edge feathering to only further enhance how deer I guess you wouldn't enhance how they enter and exit, but enhance the hunting so your strategy is improved, and you're basically dictating or predicting where deer are going to walk in and out of that field, and you're placing blinds and stands appropriately.
Yep.
According to that. So edge feathering, that portion, super, super important. Looks like number 4 is another bedding area thicket. Is that right?
No, number 4 is the edge feathering from the north side of the food plot.
Oh, the northeast kind of corner there?
Kind of the northeast side of the food plot going to the north boundary. And this is about funneling deer into the food plot.
Through basically kind of a natural, it's a wider bottom that feeds through that little north section, but because of this edge feathering that can take place there, you're again concentrating some deer throughout that wider travel course. There, because we walked through that's where we first walked through there, and there was 3-ish trails, and they could have picked all of them if they wanted to, or they could have come to that food plot from that direction 4 times and came out in four different places if they really wanted to in that small area. But we don't. Why allow that to happen?
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like another important thing, just looking at this map on like a smaller piece of land, is analyzing the neighborhood, your neighbors, and how you can hunt it, and how you can maybe draw deer off the neighbors onto yours or whatever. But I feel like that's a really big.
That's always a big part, and especially on smaller acreage of going, what can I, even though it's a smaller acreage, how can I put something here that the neighbors don't have?
Yeah.
And bedding thickets is one of the biggest because there's not a lot of woody browse in the neighborhood, and there's not a lot of this kind of thick woody growth and structures.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you get heavy rains and wind, the number 8 that we'll get to is all going to be laying flat or laying not nearly as tall as it could be. And so that's adding food source that's beneficial year round and not just a cover crop or standing beans or whatever. And then putting in these structures like edge feathering and a couple others we'll mention in the future is all about adding something that's not in the neighborhood.
Right.
To me, this number 4, this edge feathering, and it's almost like it's edge feathering but kind of tree felling, you might say. As we get away from the edge of the food plot, you're just dropping trees and hinging trees down to where you're trying to create almost a natural fence that deer don't want to cross. And it's not like you're building this huge obstruction that's out of the ordinary. It happens in nature all the time with windstorms, tornadoes, whatever, where trees fall over and they start walking around them.
Right.
And we're just doing that in a strategic location where now deer are just like, okay, I'm going to walk right at the edge of the food plot, or going to cross a little further and walk right on the other edge of the food plot close, and that always is close to a stand. So it's just using nature to our advantage.
Yeah.
And they're super, I hope everyone listens and caught the fact that it was cut some and hinge some. It wasn't hinge every single tree through there.
Yeah.
That mixture.
Yes.
Got to have that mixture, that healthy balance.
Because, when you cut these big trees or bigger junk trees, you get a lot of regrowth. So you're now getting great food, but it's not a horrible sight of damaged, hurt trees across the landscape with the hinge cutting. Mm-hmm. And not all tree species want to be hinged or will be hinged the correct way. They may splinter and do all kinds of nasty stuff. So it's hinging some, cutting others all the way down, and you're getting a great diversity in there. So
for sure.
Anyway, number 5 is
right in the
the
center.
creek, the heart of the access on this property. When you look at this place, it's a little bit bigger on the south end than the north end by the division of the creek, but it's pretty close to the center. And if you were to try to access the east or the south side just by walking the boundaries, you're going to have some difficulty. And so using the great advantage to this property is the creek. We have big banks, probably 10 foot in some places.
Which is 100% key. This is not, that's why that can become an access trail. Because literally you can walk in there and you're not seen out of it. So that means, in the reverse or respective, they're not seeing you as you're walking in there.
No.
Your scent is very well confined kind of within those banks, and it's if you're working with the thermals, cool, they're going downstream, like you can walk and navigate through here very undetected. Of course, you're gonna have to watch and be mindful of how much rain you've been getting.
Right.
But
you may have to walk in hip waders sometimes. The other thing is
that is key right there.
That seems like the most
creek.
important thing.
A lot of times you're walking in and it's cooler in the day, like before daylight.
Yeah.
And so you're walking in and your scent is probably just going to sit in that creek.
In that bottom, yeah.
So even if the wind is supposed to be coming from the west, if it's calm, it's still just going to sit in the creek. So you don't have to worry about your scent blowing out across the landscape. And so that the creek access is going to be the really game changer of this place. There's 3 or 4 stands located on this property, 4 or 5, I should say, that are using the creek to access.
Yeah.
And one of them in particular being coming up, that is where you're going to walk the entire length of the creek and use terrain to your advantage.
And the important part is, if you didn't have that creek, the way that the timber lays, let's just say if you take all the trees on the south side of that creek all the way to the south side of that property line, you could look, I mean, it's dead flat. So if it's fall time, so there's no leaves on the trees, the stinging nettle is flat on the ground, and you try to get to a stand on the south side of that creek, no matter what, you could be seen from a long ways away. You were educating. If there are deer there, tons of deer. They're going to see you as you're walking in. So you have to use that creek. Thank goodness it's there.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was probably a major selling
like the
point
property,
for him.
I mean, that we turkey hunt a lot on.
Oh,
it's of that same height. That's like sneak and peek, and you're getting around that place.
That's cool.
Yeah. Number 6 is the southwest corner. It is kind of going into the, no matter what, you want to have stands set up for multiple winds. And this is a one stand for a north wind of some sort, northeast, northwest, north, to where basically you're walking in and you're using the only road system coming down the hill. You're walking down the steep little ditch that feeds into the creek, crossing the creek and zipping up 50 yards and hunting the south side of a crossing that kind of comes along the creek and side slope of that south side of the property.
And what makes that stand so good is if we look just outside of the property lines to the west, we can see a field that sits a little further south but has a point that comes out on a little ridge, and then you have the topography. There's that point that comes out, and then there's a big pinch right there off the property between the creek and then that neighbor's field edge that kind of walking and accessing down. All that right there, that's an extreme pinch for any deer coming and using that creek as a travel corridor to move through. Maybe they're moving up to check the bedding areas that you've created, or the food plot, or the neighbor's big old field that we talk about there in number 8. Whatever it is, there's a big pinch there, and you want to be close to your property line to be able to hunt and access that pinch, but on your property without obviously trespassing. And then the hinging behind is, let's just say something would want to sneak or come around that point off the property. The hinging and the lane of trees behind you, that obstruction forces them down below you, upwind of you.
And didn't you say this hinging right here was kind of a barrier for the neighbor as well?
Yeah, where
a stand or something.
See in as well.
We can see some stands across the way.
Yeah.
It doubles as that for sure.
Number 7 is probably my favorite stand on the whole place, and
that's
on the bluff. We're using the creek all the way to the northeast side, and there's a bluff there on the creek, probably a 30-foot elevation change.
That's cool.
It's sharp.
And
that's cool.
Going to walk up the side slope of that bluff, and on a part of it, climb into a big old black oak, and you're going to have deer. If you notice, the creek feeds out to the east, and there's a brushy field to the south, and a kind of a mowed hay field to the northeast. And so it's a good little pinch.
A lot of things come together right there.
And then you have that elevation where they're kind of climbing the elevation and coming over that slope. There's some heavy, heavy deer trails right there. Yeah. We're using this on a southwest wind or a west wind, blowing it down the creek or into the creek on calm days. And so you can hunt it and really see a lot of. You're up on that bluff, so you can see to the southeast and see this overgrown field.
Are you seeing hunted on the south side of the creek there?
You're hunting on the north side of the creek. Yep. So it's a really awesome spot.
That's cool.
And, but from that stand, you can shoot a creek crossing just as. I mean, it's a heavy trail coming out of that neighbor's. We're gonna call it old field. Heavy trails there, and then you're also 15 yards above it, but 15 yards off that trail that comes up that steep ridge and filters right
so it's one of those that if you can get into the stand with really strong wind too, there's a good chance the deer aren't smelling you anymore. It's just carrying over the top of their heads.
It's that high. That's
cool.
That's probably my favorite spot.
It looks like a good spot.
Number 8 is the old field to the east. This, if you were to describe it, I would just say in one word, Bucky. It has that kind of where you look and there's
great adjective.
There's trees in it. There's a lot of forbs. There's a lot of grasses. It's just brushy. It's very Bucky to where you just know at some point there's going to be a buck, dog, and a doe during the rut, and you'll be able to see him from number 7. And but we also know that it's great bedding, but it's not the thick woody stuff that can be searched out or the does that seek that out as they will in the bedding thickets. So it's a great bedding area, but there's a good chance a couple bucks will be dogging a doe, and she's going to push out of there and try to go to one of these bedding thickets.
For sure.
And it's just another dot in the roundabout whirlpool of bucks chasing does around the property trying to find a receptive one. Very awesome, but no management there. It's just the neighbor's field.
So the neighbor doesn't hay it or anything. He just lets it go.
Nice. Up.
Forbs and broadleaves.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
yeah,
so,
that does sound bucky.
Number 9 is
right here along the western edge.
That's it.
That ditch and that field edge is critical. But and that's one of those places on this property that you can overlook and walk past and basically visually see it as an underutilized portion of the property, but with just a little bit of edge feathering and dropping some trees, you create a pinch or you enhance a pinch that's there. So we're talking about there's a little ditch it's right along the property line just off that field edge that is still pretty steep. It's like 5 or 6 foot deep that you can walk, and you're kind of down hidden from that field as you're accessing.
Yeah.
But then if you, in addition to that, you take some of the trees right along that field edge and drop those, you're creating more cover. But what you're also doing is creating a pinch for the deer to only enter and exit that field closest to that creek.
Right.
So they're not going to come above you. So basically, in essence, you can hunt this on a southeast or south wind and blow it directly up from where you came from to that northwest corner of the property. If you edge along this field edge, you're just bringing those deer down closer to that creek system. So, again, we took let's just call that 150-yard wide field edge, and a deer could have crossed through there
any which way.
Let's say 50% of the time they crossed it within shooting range of that creek, but the other 50% was somewhere north of that, and you took that 50% of option above the creek and said, no, not anymore. So now 100% come down within shooting range of that creek. That's how you take a good spot, a decent spot, and make it a great spot.
Right.
Using natural, replicating, if you will, nature and what we talked about earlier, a windstorm, laying these trees down, and enhancing a natural travel corridor.
How many times, to me, one of the best access we can have, I would take a terrain change access over a road access every day of the week, because I would much rather go up a creek, go up a ditch, or even go up a ravine or draw. That's one of my favorites, is climb up a ravine on the side slope of a ridge and then hunt the top of the head of that draw and catch a lot of deer moving through there. So to me, don't overlook. Get a topo map, get a Hunt Terra map, and
it doesn't have to be drastic either.
No, and a lot of times some of our best ones are the ones that don't really even show up on a topo map. You're kind of
just
like
a small little knoll in a field or something. Just something like really small.
little change in the topo lines on only a couple of them, you're like, that looks like a little bit of a draw, and then you go and find it, you're like, wow, this is a major little change right here. So
this becomes an interesting point to an access point.
There seriously was that exact scenario. I was scouting a public land, and there was just a little knoll, like maybe 4 or 5 foot, and to get to where I want to put the stand, I've got to cross a bean field because there's a little cutout on a finger out into the field. That's a perfect place to put a stand. But I didn't like the idea of crossing that field in the middle of the day.
Sure.
But where I'd seen the deer bedding, that little knoll, and then once the beans get a little bit higher, because they planted them a little bit late, but that is going to provide me enough cover,
a little bit of screen,
just to sneak around that little hill to get to that finger without really exposing myself too much in the middle of that field.
So what was the name of the public area where you put in and then the coordinates of the stand?
I sent him the pictures, and he's wanting to know the coordinates of this area.
I'm kidding. Seriously, I'll come and film.
All right.
If they're there and you got a good shot of killing them,
I just rearranged
cool.
the camera. I had the camera set up in the wrong spot, so we'll see.
Gosh, daggone it.
We'll see where they're at. Well, I just set it up, and then I scouted them. Anyways,
so
which one are we on now? 10?
Number 10. And that goes
Not
with...
last. We got 11.
Oh, we got 11. Okay,
right.
I don't see 11
I can't
on there,
see
but,
anything on here.
it's kind of hard to see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Number 10 is the access to the food plot. You could make the straight line, nice, easy walk right down the slope, or you could make
the crown of that little ridge, right?
Yeah, just
that's so easy. We talked about access. I think it was on the hunting podcast, didn't we? It was about taking what often seems as just the easiest route is the worst route to go. Don't walk across the crown of the ridge.
You could walk. Oh, the crown of the ridge one kills me. You could walk straight down the slope, right to the food plot, nice and
direct
easy
line.
peasy Japanesey, where it's just, you know what movie that's from? Shawshank.
Is it really?
Yep. And
Give me
anyway,
nightmares, boys.
We're dropping some movie knowledge.
there you go. So anyway, you could go right down the crown of that ridge, straight into the blind, and set up perfectly. But every deer that was in the food plot, especially if you hunted in the morning, is going to see you coming down that hill. There is a way that where you could drop some trees, do some edge feathering, some hinging, and you can walk straight east from the parking spot and walk then straight south and use the terrain change to where you're hidden against the you're not silhouetted, you're down in the slope, and you're going to have trees down, and so you can get in there nice and easy. So that is one thing that I definitely think that a lot of us are guilty of.
Oh yeah.
It will take you an extra.
Yeah. Oh, I've getting skyline on a ridge top. Oops.
Yeah.
It will take you one extra minute to make that little bit larger of a loop around that ridge on the back side of it to get to that stand. Do it. It's that easy. And it's funny because once you start, if you have made those mistakes, and we've all done it, we've all walked across the ridge top or done something silly, and you're like, oh shoot, man, I know that one axis, I need to change that. But then when you start to do it, and you're really conscious of how you're walking to and from your stand, like let's say you take a buddy in there, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to walk across here. You're like, no, bro,
what are you doing?
No, please, no, don't walk across the ridge. Don't silhouette yourself. Exactly. Don't do this. And because you probably
not the ridge top.
Yeah.
Just walking along. Come on, guys, it's the fastest route.
Yeah. That's going to be the thumbnail image for this podcast with Zach like walking like this. I wish everyone listening could have seen that.
Number 11 is, once again, adding more of that growth from a deer's head to its hooves. And that's just
like head to the hooves.
That's right. We want growth head to the hooves. And so by doing this on the edge
foot to the ear just doesn't have the same ring.
No.
Head to the hooves.
And we want to talk about how we can add that and how we can improve a food plot. When you think about a food plot, you think about, we just talked about this last week with Justin Adams, is the food plot species a lot of times don't grow well under the canopy of trees. And even then, they still just don't do well. There's too much competition for them.
And you certainly see that during stress periods. You see that
the fall food plots
exponentially
are always the ones that I see struggling. And then big crop fields as well later on in the summer. And so we need something with a big, deep root that can really get the nutrients and withstand that competition.
Water. Yeah.
And so that only comes with a perennial. and a perennial like a native grass, big blue, little blue, switchgrass, and then going into the forbs, you've got the blazing stars or the partridge peas, and the other species, they're going to have a better root system than a soybean or a clover or a turf grass. And so we have the blend with Pure Air Natives, the Edge blend, that is I think there's a 15% discount to our listeners.
Yep.
And you guys can get it. I think it's $108 an acre, which you wouldn't even have to buy a full bag. You'd buy half a bag on this one.
But that's the thing. Like this property, again, what we talked about, we let off. This property is so applicable to a lot of people. So even if you have a 1 acre food plot, if you bought one of those bags to do the edge, you'd have plenty left over. So find a neighbor
or
a co-op.
A 10-yard strip
if
you wanted. And there's food in there. We've got it mixed with a bunch of other stuff. There's food with those forbs during the growing season. And then you've got, as they mature, you've got great cover and seeds for other species. So it's definitely something that will help you in your hunting strategy. It will help you in your habitat strategy. It will help you on your overall land production and land legacy. How about that?
There we go.
Hey, bringing it full circle.
You planting something that's going to be there for a long time. So,
which, in respect to that, if you only listen to the Habitat podcast, be sure to listen to the hunting podcast too. To listen to, it was honestly just an open dialogue with Ryan Kirby, the owner of this property. Just as genuine as you could get of a conversation with. Well, there was 0 notes. We didn't have anything that was like, we really want to ask him this. We really want to do this in the podcast. It was like, you knew Ryan, talked to him obviously in the past. And it's like, let's just have that campfire feeling conversation and see where it goes, because that you'll find the most authentic conversations like that. But I guess I say that when you talked about legacy, you'll hear him talk about bringing his son out here and what he wants to do and how this property is going to play an important role for that kid as he gets older.
That's really important too.
Yeah.
That's just really important, just to pass the heritage on too.
It's funny how, like, you thought, oh, I'm planting seed, but you're planting a seed for that kid too, as you're planting, whether it's, the natives, the plot, whatever. I know it's deep and
and I know we've talked about it before about, like,
it's real.
It's ingrained in all of our memory. I mean,
it is,
those memories will just never, ever, ever be forgotten.
You guys remember the first food plot you ever planted?
Oh, clover. Clover in the North Bottom.
Oh, North Bottom.
Yeah.
Adam?
buck oats.
Buck oats. But hard oats.
Planted them on our neighbor's property. Actually, the field by Old Orchard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
really?
Planted them, and then we planted, the next one was on our farm that's now called Old Food Plot.
Yep.
And we planted wheat and rape and turnips.
I
was 10 years
good
old.
Old perennial white clover, just mixture of, I remember the old feed store I went to and got, and then I had a
10 cents a pound.
Dad's rototiller that he used for the garden. It wasn't a big area, of course, but it's just a corner of the back hayfield that he didn't cut. There's a couple exposed rocks. And I remember I was young and that was like one of the first times using that rototiller. I was just
I've done that before.
What's the biggest thing you learned in that?
What?
In planting your first food plot, what did you learn?
Oh, mine was a failure.
You know what I learned? Those guys on TV are full of it.
They're hunting over these perfectly manicured fields.
Yeah. I learned that I had a lot to learn.
Yeah.
At that time. Woo!
Yeah. Well, what do you guys got for Would You Rather? You got anything?
Silence. No, I do.
It makes it kind of difficult when we ask this every single week.
Well, that too, and I was excited for this property breakdown. I was really into it. I wasn't.
I forget. About it. I mean, sometimes I'll just forget. Like, on the way over here, I'm like, maybe I should start thinking about.
Maybe I really need to start thinking about that. Would you rather? Maybe it's funny because Adam, I know as we talked. Like our friend Mike Gailey and Ryan had talked about it. Like, they listen pretty regularly to the podcast, and they'll throw out a "Would you rather" to us in conversation. Like, Mike asked me one the other day. I can't remember it now. I'll have to call him. But
I'll tell you, Justin Adams had one for us that we got so focused on the natives, and he goes, I forgot to ask you the would you rather. He asked me, and I'll ask you this. He said, would you rather go on I'm trying to remember what he said. Would you rather catch a 18-inch smallmouth or a 20-inch smallmouth on a river with your buddies, or go on a quail hunt with your buddies? And I said I'd rather go on a quail hunt with my buddies. I catch 20-inch smallmouth all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Biggest one I ever caught was 18, but
look at film 4 and we'll see the ones they caught.
Yeah, 15 inchers, baby. Yeah.
That's a good one, though.
Wow. So that's what I said.
He asked what, but it's funny. It's like a lot of people look forward to it.
Okay.
What was Ryan's the other day?
Ryan asked what painting we would rather have.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
He asked if we'd rather have a scene of turkey, deer, or quail.
Yep.
Would you rather go on a quail hunt with your buddies, or would you rather go up to South Dakota and go on an awesome pheasant hunt?
Quail hunt. Those pheasants aren't even native. Get out of here.
Yeah.
So what, dude?
Jaw just dropped right there for
You've
Zach.
eaten pheasant, though, right?
Yeah.
It's very good.
I'll tell you this.
Man.
I would
is
love
hard
to
to beat.
I would love to go pheasant hunting, but I haven't been on enough great quail hunts to really say,
Just
I want to experience something new.
Every time that shotgun, every time he's pumping out a shell, he's like, removing invasives.
Gosh.
Yeah.
What about you?
I've had a herbicide spray on my back. Now it's time for a shotgun.
Yeah, that's right.
Removing invasives.
You know why quail is I talk so much about it? It was because the fact that I got so hooked on hunting quail about the time the population went down.
Yeah.
And so it was like,
it was a tease.
It would be like, it was the biggest tease of my life, probably, to where you think about, if I gave you a bow and said, there's a 200-inch buck running around here, you hang the stands, plant the plots, and then the day before season opens up, I pull the plug, change the locks, and say, all right, see ya. That's what it feels like.
Go on. I had a kind of unique discussion
What
with my
would you
brother.
do? You didn't answer it. Quail hunt or pheasant hunt? Yeah.
I would do quail, too.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I would.
I just, whenever I lived in South Dakota, I lived up there for a year. Like, I would just go out on a piece of public ground. They had cornfields and stuff. They wouldn't cut them. They just let them be. Just walk 2 rows.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Well, and that's...
you walk 2 rows and you can just get your limit. And they were the best eating. I mean, quail or pheasants is so good, man.
Yeah.
Well, now they're talking about...
And they got spurs.
Yeah, that's right.
They're beautiful. And I know they're not.
They're incredibly gorgeous.
Yeah.
My brother and I had this conversation. We talked about like getting his oldest boy into hunting, kind of like when and how this past week, and just brought up talking about when I do have kids, it's like they're squirrel hunting first.
Yeah, that's a good.
Because there's no antlers. It's a gray, bushy-tailed creature, and it's like, put the sights on it, shoot it. If you miss, who the heck cares? It doesn't matter. You see a bunch of them.
Target rich
environment. Plink away, have fun, and I guess what it was is you talking about the first quail hunt. That's what got you into it. For me, it was squirrel and rabbit hunting.
Rabbit's fun, man. You get the beagles running.
Woo-wee.
That's fun. Yeah,
I love it.
We didn't get the
and they
beagles
eat good
running
too
today.
No, we didn't go on a rabbit trail. Certainly didn't. We were proud of ourselves.
Yeah. All right. Well, that pretty well wraps up this week's
Do you have one?
podcast.
I'll think of one next week.
Okay.
So
too much time
I
on the
thought
road.
you had one. I
My
didn't
brain
know.
is fried right now.
Yeah, we are thankful for you guys always joining us and always listening and sharing the podcast with your friends, and so we sincerely appreciate that. Hopefully, you guys will continue sharing it with your friends. That only helps us grow and reach new people and continue doing this every single week.
For sure.
At 11 o'clock at night. And
whatever time it is.
Yeah. Anyway, we will catch you guys next time, I guess. I said wee on that podcast.
Oh, gosh.
we
Cut it out.
We're done.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Land and Legacy's Hunting and Habitat Management Podcast. If you like what you hear, check us out at landandlegacy.tv. You can submit a viewer question right there. We're answering on the podcast. Or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Feels pretty good knowing that from the beginning of time, God has called us to be a caretaker, a gamekeeper, a manager of the land. So with that being said, don't you think we should do it all for the love of the land and the glory to God?